War. War never changes.
You some kind of war junkie?
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Welcome to the War 102 podcast, where we explore the doctrine, theory, philosophy, and history of warfare. I'm your guide, Paul Darling, and I want to share what I learned in nearly 30 years in uniform. So let's get to learning about the most influential activity in human history, war. Welcome to episode 98, Vegetius. I remember reading years ago in a discussion of heavyweight boxing champions that Rocky Marciano was both overrated and underrated. He was overrated for being 49-0 and the only undefeated heavyweight champion in history. But he was also underrated because his famous fights were against an aged Joe Louis and a likewise other underrated champion in Jersey Joe Walcott. Vegetius falls in that same category. Much like Yamini, there is little to be gained from reading Vegetius because so much of what he wrote has just become ingrained in the military art. Reading it all seems so common sense and obvious. His most famous quotes so much a part of modern vernacular as to tarnish their brilliance. But he can't be ignored, so here we go. In the twilight of the Roman Empire, as barbarian incursions battered the once impregnable frontiers and internal decay eroded the foundations of imperial might, a military theorist named Flavius Vegetius Renatus penned a work that would transcend its era. His Epitome Re Militaris, commonly known as De Re Militari, or On Military Matters, emerged not as a chronicle of contemporary battles, but as a reflective compendium drawing on the glories of Rome's past military prowess. Written likely in the late 4th or early 5th century during the reign of Emperor Theodosius I, or maybe Valentinian III, Vegetius's treatise was dedicated to the emperor as a plea for reform. It lamented the decline of Roman arms and advocated a return to the disciplined, professional soldiery that had forged an empire spanning from the Atlantic to the Euphrates. Vegetius himself remains a shadowy figure, his life obscured by the mists of antiquity. He was not a seasoned general, but a civilian administrator, and he had a keen interest in military history. His work synthesized earlier sources, including Cato the Elder, Cornelius, Celsus, and Frontinius, blending them into a coherent manual. Divided into 4 books, though some editions include a 5th on veterinary matters, De Re Militari is structured as a practical guide rather than a philosophical discourse. It emphasizes the art of war as a science, rooted in preparation, organization, and strategy, rather than mere valor or numerical superiority. This approach marked a departure from the heroic epics of earlier times, positioning Vegetius as a bridge between classical Roman militarism and the evolving warfare of subsequent centuries. The narrative of Vegetius's book unfolds like a blueprint for imperial revival, beginning with the foundational elements of an army and progressing to the intricacies of combat and siegecraft. In Book 1, Vegetius delves into the selection and training of recruits, arguing that the strength of an army lies not in its size, but in the quality of its men. He advocates recruiting from rural populations, whom he deems hardier and more accustomed to toil than urban dwellers softened by luxury. The Roman people conquered the world by the valor of their soldiers, he asserts, underscoring that victory stems from rigorous preparation. Recruits should be of moderate height, around 5 foot 10 inches in the Roman measure, strong, agile, and free from physical defects. Training regimens are prescribed in exhaustive detail. 25 miles in 5 hours under full load, swimming rivers, vaulting onto horses, and mastering weapons through repetitive drills. Vegetius stressed the importance of mock battles to simulate the chaos of war, fostering endurance and discipline. This book sets the tone for the entire treatise, portraying warfare as a craft honed through sweat and structure, where the untrained horde is doomed to defeat. Transitioning to the unorganized framework in Book 2, Vegetius outlines the structure of the Roman legion, a unit he idealizes as the pinnacle of military efficiency. The legion, comprising around 6,000 men, is subdivided into cohorts, centuries, and smaller maniples, allowing for flexibility in formation. He describes the roles of centurions, the standard bearers, and engineers, emphasizing a hierarchy that rewards merit over birthright. The aquila, or eagle standard, symbolizes the legion's soul, its loss equated to utter disgrace. Vegetius also covers logistics, from supply trains to camp fortifications, insisting that an army marches on its stomach. Hunger is more terrible than the sword, he warns, highlighting the perils of inadequate provisioning. This section reveals Vegetius' admiration for the early imperial army, contrasting with the lax standards of his own day, where auxiliaries and federates diluted Roman purity. Book 3 shifts to the realm of tactics and strategy, where Vegetius' lessons shine brightest. Here, he expounds on the principles of engagement, advising generals to choose battlegrounds wisely, favoring high ground, avoiding ambushes, and exploiting enemy weaknesses. He categorizes battles into 3 types: those of necessity, those of choice, and those of opportunity, urging caution in the first and boldness in the latter. Formations like the triple line, hastati, principes, and triarii are detailed, with reserves held back to reinforce faltering fronts. Cavalry and infantry coordination is stressed, as is the use of deception, feigned retreats, hidden reserves, and misinformation. Vegetius introduces maxims on morale, noting that soldiers fight better when motivated by hope of victory rather than fear of defeat. He also addresses the psychological aspects of war, such as the impact of omens and the need for inspirational leadership. This book culminates in a series of aphorisms that encapsulate his philosophy. War is won through foresight, not fortune. The final book, Book 4, extends the discussion to sieges, fortifications, and naval warfare, acknowledging the multifaceted nature of Roman conflicts. Vegetius describes siege engines like ballistae, onagers, and battering rams, alongside defensive measures such as moats and palisades. For naval matters, he draws on earlier Mediterranean traditions, advocating for swift galleys over cumbersome ships, and emphasizing ramming tactics over boarding. Though less original than the preceding sections, this book underscores Vegetius' holistic view. An army must master land and sea, offense and defense, to dominate. The primary lessons embedded in De Re Militari resonate with timeless wisdom, distilled from centuries of Roman experience. Foremost is the primacy of discipline over bravery. Vegetius repeatedly asserts that courage is cultivated, not inherent. Few are born brave, he says. Many become so through care and force of discipline. He observes, challenging the notion of heroic individualism prevalent in barbarian cultures. This lesson advocates for systematic training, transforming raw recruits into cohesive units, capable of withstanding superior numbers. Another key tenet is the value of preparation and intelligence. Victory in war does not depend entirely upon numbers or mere courage. Only skill and discipline will ensure it, he posits, urging generals to scout terrain, assess enemy strength, and plan accordingly. Strategy trumps brute force. Vegetius favors attrition through maneuver rather than the costly frontal assaults. Logistics emerges as a critical pillar, with Vegetius warning against overextension, or culmination. Armies must be self-sufficient with secure supply lines and fortified camps to prevent surprises. He also emphasizes adaptability, recommending that formations adjust to circumstances, dense phalanxes for open fields, loose skirmish lines for rough terrain. Morale and leadership are intertwined. A general must inspire loyalty through fairness, sharing hardships, and rewarding valor. Vegetius critiques rash commanders who seek glory at the expense of their troops, advocating prudence. It is better to overcome the enemy by famine, surprises, or terror than by general actions, for in the latter fortune has often a greater share than valor. This pragmatic approach prioritizes victory with minimal loss, reflecting Rome's evolution from expansionist conquest to defensive consolidation. Health and hygiene form another understated lesson, with advice on camp sanitation, diet, and medical care to combat disease, which Vegetius deems deadlier than battle. He touches on ethics, albeit indirectly, by promoting wars of necessity and just cause, though his focus remains utilitarian. Collectively, these lessons paint warfare as a disciplined art, where intellect and organization prevail over chaos. Among Vegetius' well-known quotes, several have permeated military thought across epochs. Perhaps most famous is Sifi pacem parabellum, if you want peace, prepare for war. And this encapsulates his belief that deterrence through strength averts conflict, a principle echoed in modern strategic doctrines. Another maxim, the good general not only sees the way to victory, he also knows when victory is impossible, highlighting the wisdom of retreat over annihilation. Let him who desires peace prepare for war, a variant of the first, is repeated in his writings. On training, it is better to have a lion at the head of an army of sheep than a sheep at the head of an army of lions. More directly from Vegetius, in war, discipline can do more than fury, contrasting controlled Roman legions with impetuous foes. The Romans conquered the world by no other means than by military training, camp discipline, and constant practice in arms. It's his quote serving as a rallying cry for reform. These quotes, pithy and profound at the same time, distill complex ideas into memorable form, which ensured their survival beyond the text. The impact of De Re Militari on Middle Ages warfare cannot be overstated. It became the preeminent manual in Europe grappling with the remnants of a Roman legacy amid feudal fragmentation. As the Western Roman Empire collapsed, starting in 476 AD, knowledge of classical tactics vanished, if not for Vegetius' work preserved in monastic scriptoria, copied by scholars who recognized its utility. By the Carolingian Renaissance in the 8th century, Charlemagne mandated its study among his nobles, viewing it as a template for reorganizing Frankish forces. Charlemagne's capitularies echoed Vegetian principles, emphasizing trained infantry over noble cavalry, though the Serbs' rise shifted emphasis towards mounted knights. Nonetheless, Vegetius influenced the fyrd system in Anglo-Saxon England and the thematic armies of Byzantium, where the treatise was translated into Greek and informed manuals like the Tactica of Emperor Leo VI. In the High Middle Ages, as feudalism matured, De Re Militari shaped chivalric ideas while clashing with them. Knights, often valorizing individual prowess, were reminded of Vegetius of collective discipline. Manuscripts proliferated. Over 400 survived from that era, attesting to its popularity. Crusader leaders like Richard the Lionheart drew on its siege tactics during the Third Crusade, employing engines and fortifications as described. The book's emphasis on training influenced military orders such as the Templars and Hospitallers, who maintained professional standing armies amid amateur feudal levies. In Italy, city-states like Venice and Florence revived Roman-style militias, with condottieri captains studying Vegetius for mercenary campaigns. The treatise's strategic lessons permeated siege warfare, dominant in the era of castles and walled towns. Vegetius' description of mantlets, towers, and mines were adapted to gunpowder's advent, bridging classical and medieval technologies. Naval sections informed Byzantium dromons and later galley fleets in the Mediterranean. Intellectually, it fueled Renaissance humanism. Figures like Machiavelli in The Art of War critiqued yet borrowed heavily from Vegetius, blending his ideas with contemporary observations. Yet the impact was not uniform. In Western Europe, the heavy cavalry charge often superseded Vegetian infantry tactics, leading to disasters like Agincourt in 1415, where English longbowmen, echoing the Roman archers, decimated French knights. Still, reformers like King Edward III of England invoked Vegetius to advocate archery training and disciplined formations. In the East, Byzantine emperors preserved Roman continuity, with Vegetius underpinning defenses against Arab and Turkish incursions. The Varangian Guard, elite infantry, embodied his ideas of selection and drill. By the late Middle Ages, as professional armies emerged, his influence waned with gunpowder's transformation of warfare. But his core lessons, discipline, preparation, strategy, endured. The Swiss pikemen and Spanish tercios reflected organized infantry revivals, indirectly tracing to his legionary model. Culturally, the book shaped perceptions of Rome as a military exemplar, inspiring medieval chroniclers and artists to depict battles with classical flair. In narrating his legacy, one sees a thread weaving through centuries of conflict. His work, born of imperial decline, illuminated paths for medieval warriors, navigating a world of fragmented kingdoms and holy wars. It reminded them that empires rise and fall on the anvil of discipline, that strategy outlives swords, and that peace is forged in the fires of readiness. Though the Middle Ages adapted his teachings to their armored, faith-driven battles, the essence remained: war is an art mastered by the prepared mind. To fully appreciate Vegetius' primary lessons, consider their application in some specific medieval contexts. Discipline, his cornerstone, addressed the feudal system's inherent weaknesses. Medieval armies often comprised vassals serving limited terms and lacking cohesion. Vegetius' call for perpetual training resonated with monarchs seeking standing forces. For instance, in the 9th century, Alfred the Great of Wessex, facing Viking raids, reorganized his fyrd into rotating divisions, allowing continuous defense while permitting agricultural duties, a nod to the balance of military and civilian life. Alfred's burhs, fortified towns, mirrored Roman castra, with garrisons drilled in arms. Strategy's primacy over valor countered the chivalric code emphasis on personal glory. At the Battle of Hastings in 1066, William the Conqueror's feigned retreats, again from Vegetius, lured the Anglo-Saxon shield walls into disarray and secured Norman victory. Similarly, during the Reconquista in Spain, Christian kings employed Vegetian ambushes and sieges against the Moorish strongholds, prioritizing attrition over heroic charges. Logistics, often overlooked in romanticized accounts, proved decisive. The Crusades' failures, like the Second Crusade's starvation in Anatolia, underscored Vegetius' warning on supply. Successful ventures, such as the First Crusade's capture of Antioch in 1098, involved meticulous provisioning and engineering, drawing on his siege chapters. The Book of Chivalry by Geoffrey de Charnay echoed Vegetian discipline, urging knights to practice beyond tournaments. In Byzantium, Maurice's Strategikon predated but paralleled Vegetius, while later works like Nicephorus's Phocas Praeceptia Militari integrated his tactics against nomadic foes. At Constantinople's fall in 1204, Venetian assailants used towers and rams as described, though betrayal aided success, and the Hundred Years' War saw English raids to weaken economies aligning with the indirect approaches that Vegetius hinted at. His naval influence was a little subtler, but the Battle of Lepanto in 1571 reflected galley tactics straight from his fourth chapter. In the 12th century, the University of Bologna included it in its curricula, influencing jurists and commanders. Translations into the vernaculars, French by Jean de Meun in 1284 and English by John Trevisa in 1408, democratized access, aiding the yeoman archers and burgher militias. Critiques arose, some decrying its anachronism in an age of plate armor and crossbows. Yet its adaptability ensured relevance. The Black Death's demographic shifts necessitated efficient forces, aligning with Vegetian quality over quantity. Overall, De Re Militari was no mere relic, but a living guide, molding medieval warfare from Carolingian reforms to late feudal innovations. Its lessons fostered resilience in turbulent times, proving that ancient wisdom could illuminate even the darkest ages, and his lessons are ingrained into every part of the military art today. Thanks for listening today. If you want to help the show, please share today's episode on any social media sites you can. Check out the War 102 Buzzsprout website for more information and to send me a message. And, of course, my thanks to the subscribers who help keep the show going. Hope you all join me next week. See you soon.